I never lose, either I win or I learn. Those are my only options, to whomever it may concern. About to be a hot topic, play with fire, you get burned. Ain't nobody give me nothing, whatever I got, better I earn. I never lose, but I learn. I either win or I learn. Those are my only options, to whomever.
We learned the hard way. We fucked up. We're not perfect, but the lessons we learn in life, they make us who we are, and here we are, starting fresh.
And we're really excited to share our journey going forward with all of you so that we can hold each other accountable through the weight loss journey. Our journey started back in March of 2020. Actually, if you've listened to our podcast, it actually started well before then. We've been, on this weight loss journey pretty much our entire life. But this particular journey, or part of our journey, started in March of 2020, where together we lost over 150 pounds. But then life hit big time in 2021.
Injuries, depression, deciding to sell our home because we needed new space, downsizing with 5 people and 2 dogs and a 2-bedroom house, and all this stuff started to add up where our whole regimen and routine got out of whack, where we were eating trash.
Yeah. And so it really affected our mental state, our physical state. Those of you who have been following along on this journey, I know you can see a difference when you look at us, when you see this on YouTube. And that's why we've started this, our journey. That's what we're calling this, our journey, because it's not just us, it's all of us together. And so we have a whole new page on veganstrongandfit.com called Our Journey, where we're going to be talking about every week something that has led us to success or maybe failure that we've learned from within the week to overcome and help us to continue on this. How we're going to do this the right way this time to make sure that we're able to support you, you're able to support us, and be sure to go on and follow us every week at veganstrongandfit.com/journey.
We're in this together.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Strong AF podcast. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Yuri.
And today we have on an amazing guest that we've been following for quite a while and listening to her podcast as well. That's Marian Erikson. Welcome to the podcast, Marian. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
And Marian is a Canadian-born and North Carolina-based voiceover artist who is hired mostly for explain-your videos, corporate narration, e-learning, commercials, and telephony, which is like phone answering systems. And her husband, daughters, and her all went plant-based in the summer of 2019 for health benefits. And after further education, they went vegan shortly thereafter. And she has started her voiceover career in 2017 and has her own website, marianvo.com. And after going plant-based, she created a niche business and launched her plant-powered vo.com website in 2020. It's a good thing that I'm not a voiceover because I struggle on my words, but we have an amazing woman here, and she's never stopped researching plant-based and vegan topics, which is what makes her so wonderful at what she does. And in April of 2021, she created the Plant-Based Briefing podcast, which we love. It's all kinds of wonderful snippets and articles that she goes through and makes it so much easier because sometimes I just don't have time to sit there and read everything. And they're shorter episodes where you're able to quickly listen in the car, on your trips, on your way to work, whatever, and really able to absorb that information, which is great for me because I have a short attention span. And there's just so much great plant-based content online, which she is able to find and put out there for us to be able to just really absorb and pull in there. And countless blogs, posts, and articles on a variety of topics like plant-based health, nutrition, animal welfare and liberation, animal agriculture and the environment, eco-friendly sustainable living, and plant-based foods, travel, and lifestyle.
And she loves to learn about all of these topics and share them in her 10-minute daily episodes on the podcast. And everybody has 10 minutes that they can go in and listen. So welcome again, Marian. We're so happy to have you on.
Thank you.
So that's great. You went in went plant-based in 2019 and vegan shortly thereafter. And we were in 2020, right when the pandemic hit. So I feel like we're similar, newer journey. So tell us about, what really triggered you to start this journey and where you began.
Well, it actually starts a long time before that because I was vegetarian for almost 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, with times in between where I wasn't, it's just a long, messy story. And all because I didn't bother to educate myself on the real reasons why. So when I was a little kid, I remember asking my mom, when I learned that the food we were eating was an actual animal. And I questioned her and she said, no, it's okay. It's okay. They're actually born for that. They live a happy life. And then when they die, we eat them. That's what they're here for. And I didn't really sit well with me, but I'm like, okay, well, that's what my mom's saying. So, but I grew up outside of Toronto, Ontario, and there's a big highway and all these trucks full of animals all the time. Not all the time, but, we'd see them very regularly. And the ones that really got to me were, I guess that we saw most were the chickens. Have you seen those trucks and they're those legs sticking out, some of them upside down? I thought they were sleeping, but they were dead already, Those were so disturbing. And then eventually, I'd say, oh, I'm not going to eat meat again. That's so awful. And then I'd go in and get a McChicken, it was just out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
But actually in 1999, I was living out west and got my open water diving certificate. And we were underwater, and Dungeness crab is a big thing out there. And that was my favorite meal. If that was on the menu, decision made, didn't have to think or, that's what I was having. But the dive master picked up this crab and there was 5 of us, around looking at this crab. And I may be projecting, but I swore that they were terrified, just flailing and everything as all these big giant humans are looking at him. And I said right there to myself, to him, I said, I'm not going to rip your leg off and suck the meat out of you ever again. I just connected with them as a being. So I was telling a friend this and he said, well, are you going to stop taking medicine that's been tested on animals? Are you going to stop wearing your leather shoes? That's hypocritical. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay, you're right. So I didn't do anything, So it was so easy to turn me off of it. But my sister, I was telling her the story and she knew it really bothered me. And then so she told me this fable story of all these starfish that were washed up on the beach, tons and tons and tons of them. And a guy was walking by and he threw one back in the ocean. And somebody said, why are you doing that? You're never going to save them all. And he picks up another one and says, I saved that one. So to me, she was saying, do your part. If you want to stop eating animals and still just do what you can do. So I went vegetarian in 2000 and I felt so good. I would look at animals, a duck in a pond. It's I'm not eating you. I feel so good. It was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But I never educated myself. I was doing it for me and that was good enough, but it wasn't because, later on I kind of hit a wall. I met my husband, we had kids, got so sick of eating out in restaurants and having the crappy pasta dish with, take stuff off it and they make you the worst meal. Back in 2010 or whatever it was. So I started researching to see, can I eat animals humanely? And based on, what you put in Google, you can get whatever answer you want, right? Mm-hmm. I even found a local farmer near Hickory here, and she talked about how humanely she raised her pigs, and she even drove them to processing, so they weren't tormented. And that was all I needed to hear, so I decided to start eating meat again, and I made sure it was just humanely raised, organic, humanely raised. I was totally duped by that whole thing because, again, I didn't look into it any further. So we had 2 little girls at the time, and the The one was 6 and she would not go back because she knew she wasn't going to eat animals. So she refused. My 2-year-old didn't know any better and she just ate what we, gave her. So anyways, that was a few more years of back to eating meat. And then something made me, I guess, just, it was always, it's wrong. So I just kept, it was in my mind and I got back to cutting out more and more. And then I was down to pescatarian because I thought fish didn't feel any pain and that was no big deal. And then I don't know what made me, but of course I Googled, do fish feel pain? Yes, of course. So went back to cutting, back to vegetarian. So this was just this whole long journey for over a decade because I didn't really know the truth. I knew obviously inside.
Yeah.
But I didn't know the truth and the details. It's well hidden from us, right?
Oh, yes. On purpose.
Even when I was, yeah, absolutely, by design. Even when I was doing the humanely raised stuff only, like I'd buy the humanely raised broiler chickens and stuff, roasted chickens. But in a restaurant, that I didn't think that. Of course, I wasn't getting the humanely raised,
right.
even though that's not really any better. But in a restaurant, I was just eating whatever they served me. So, but so we were back to vegetarian when I think it was on a podcast that I heard John Mackey, who was the former CEO of Whole Foods and the founder. He was on the Rich Roll podcast, actually, is what it was, talking about his book, The Whole Foods Diet, which he co-wrote with 2 doctors from the Forks Over Knives documentary, which I didn't know at the time. But anyway, he was talking about all the health benefits of whole food plant-based diet and all the negative things about dairy and eggs and meat, which I didn't eat the meat at the time, but I was really kind of blown away. And I bought his book and on vacation, bought it right before we went to the beach for a week. And I drove my husband nuts because it was shocking, right? So I kept elbowing him, sitting out at the pool. Oh my God, listen to this part. How do we not know this stuff? If you guys know, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you first learn it all, how bad it all is for you and how easy it is to reverse all these chronic diseases.
Yes.
So anyways, read that book. We came home from vacation. The very next day, we cleaned out all the dairy, all the eggs, all the processed foods. And this book had a 28-day meal plan, which I needed because I had no idea what to cook. But that started our journey. It was July of 2019. And, I kept researching because I wasn't really much of a cook. We ate out all the time anyway. So being whole food plant-based, I had to learn how to cook.
Right.
Living in a town without, any vegan restaurants or anything too. So, but as I kept researching, there's so many plant-based podcasts out there. There's so much great stuff. And the ones that were focused on plant-based, whole food, plant-based food and living would always sprinkle in somebody on talking about the environment and then an animal rights activist. Mm-hmm. And I remember hearing Seb Alex and James Aspey, and I was so shocked. I was taking notes. I was crying, listening to it. How can this be? So it took me another just over 6 months to realize I was vegan.
Yeah.
And that I had to be active. It's not enough to, it was not enough just to do my own thing when there's so much suffering and, the planet's falling apart too. Mm-hmm. One other thing too that was interesting was my sister went vegetarian shortly after I did. And then she went vegan in 2017 or something. But she had done different diets, she'd gone gluten-free and I can't remember what else, cutting out all these different things. And then she came to visit and she was eating what I thought was vegan. I didn't even know how to pronounce it. And I just thought, it's just another weird diet thing she's doing. And I never asked and she didn't tell me, so it had no impact on me. Mm-hmm. That's more why I think I have got to speak out because she could have had an influence on me so many years before. So
yeah, I completely agree. It's one of those things and we kind of went on the same thing. And I don't know, I've heard it in some other groups called selfish vegan because we did go vegan or plant-based for our health. In the beginning, we weren't concerned about the animals or the environment. That was in the back of our minds, but it wasn't the reason, And then
you probably didn't know it was something to be concerned about.
Not at all. And then we started watching all the documentaries, like you said, doing all this research and watching documentaries, Googling things, listening to podcasts. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's one of those things where if I hadn't done that, I don't think I would have stuck to it. It would have been like any other diet that you go on and would have went back. But then after seeing all that, it's like you can't unlearn what you saw. And now it's like, okay, so I did it for me and for my health, but now there's no way that I could go back because I've seen the way it impacts the animals, the way it impacts the earth, and I just couldn't do that.
That is so true. Yeah.
So I know for me, I was listening to a podcast and the lady said, chicken is the devil. And I'm sitting there thinking, chicken is the devil? I love chicken. So I'm like, look, let me pay attention. And then she's talking about all these chemicals they put in it and everything. And then the benefits of a plant-based diet. And I'm sitting here thinking like, okay. We've been going to the gym constantly just about every day. But then Tuesdays we're going to Buffalo Wild Wings and gorging out on this chicken. I'm sitting here thinking like, God, man, we need to do something different. But we didn't just hop into plant-based. We were sort of like you where we started out with pescatarian, and that was going to be like just our goal, pescatarian. And then we started adding in days of, like 2 or 3 days where we were just straight plant-based. Mm-hmm. And then we started thinking like, well, I don't think we really need this.
Yeah, we got to where we weren't even really eating it, but like 1 meal a week. And I was like, well, there's no reason to continue doing this because we don't need it. And at first too, we thought, well, we'll let our kids eat, like if we go out somewhere, we'll let them eat whatever, but at home they'll eat what we cook. Well, it was also the pandemic. We didn't really go out anywhere. The kids were fine. And we were like, well, there's no reason for it. And the biggest contribution it had for us was health benefits with Yuri's blood pressure. He quit taking blood pressure medicine within a month of going plant-based. And then I no longer had the constipation issues that I had since I was like 7 years old that I was constantly going to the doctor for. And the biggest thing was Camden, who had frequent asthma attacks and was in the hospital twice a month for an attack that we couldn't get under control at the house. He quit having asthma attacks. He was severely allergic to dairy and we never knew it.
Unbelievable. It really is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Medical problems since you were 7, blood pressure medication. It's so awful that the doctors don't even know this, but they're not taught nutrition in school.
No.
So like we know way more than most doctors do about nutrition.
Yeah. Actually, we had COVID early this year, and I had no idea like why I wasn't getting better. I started going back to the same way that I was, even though I was still eating the same stuff. I was having a lot of constipation issues. Eating certain foods like black beans and things that had never hurt my stomach before would automatically trigger. Like I was 9 months pregnant as soon as I ate a bite of black beans. It was ridiculous. And so I went to the doctor, had some x-rays and things done. They tried to put me on all this medication. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that again. I actually talked to my chiropractor, who was very holistic health focused. And he was like, I read a study that what was happening, and the same thing had happened to him too, which is why he had read up on it, is that long COVID was affecting people in a way where your immune system is hyperactive. And so it fall off COVID very quickly. I didn't have any major symptoms during COVID other than I did have some loss of taste and smell and things like that, but I didn't have a high fever. I had a headache, a severe headache, but I had no like coughing, none of that stuff, none of the severe symptoms, but my immune system was just in overdrive and it didn't come down. And so because my immune system never came back down to a level that it should have after, it was causing all these issues where I was extremely tired. It depleted my vitamin D and I was just having so many issues. And so he gave me a natural antihistamine, which brought my immune system down without having to go on any prescription drugs. And I have been great since then.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. It's just crazy. Like, the first thing the doctors rush to, which I'm not against Western medicine at all. I think it's a very healthy balance that you have to find. You have to find a physician that you trust. But, the first thing that they rush to is, okay, take all these medications. I'm not going to look at the root issue. Let's just get you on all this to fix the symptoms. And whereas I like to focus on, okay, but why? What's causing this? Let's fix that part.
Exactly. I read an article on my podcast a few weeks ago from T. Colin Campbell's Center for Nutrition Studies, titled something like, what would happen if our doctors were paid to keep people well? It's a total reversal of the system. It's fascinating. It's not going to happen anytime soon,
right. But unfortunately,
yeah, focus on health instead of sick care.
Exactly. I mean, our world would be a completely different place because pharma in general is one of the largest businesses, and the food industry is involved. The doctors, even if they don't know, I don't believe that doctors have malintent. I believe they go with wanting to help. It's the system and the way the education system and everything is set up to not teach them the things that they need to know. So they're doing what they believe is right. I don't think in any way that there is any malintent, but it's just the way the system is set up. You have to start again at the root of the system to be able to really make an impact.
Yeah. Big pharma is so ingrained, and that's what they're taught in medical school, is how to treat, what medications to treat, but not to find this, not the root cause, like you said. Yeah. Similar to medical or animals in research too, that's such old technology, and it's huge business breeding animals specifically for testing and research, that that industry is ingrained in lobbying, and they don't want anything to change. But all the time that's spent, and I think it's something like 95% of animal trials don't make it to human trials because they're not the same. So there's so much time and money wasted that could be spent on looking for cures for human diseases. And it's big pharma ingrained with animal agriculture. So, what is it? 70% of antibiotics, a huge percentage of antibiotics go to farm animals. Yeah.
Which you ingest once you eat them.
Yes.
And we wonder why there's so many allergies and intolerances to antibiotics, and why we're resistant to them. You've been eating them your entire life.
Yeah. And same with our companion animals too. They're eating even worse food than humans because it's all the stuff that's not even human grade.
Yeah.
And they're eating food that are allergens. My cat doesn't normally eat cow, or she won't go catch a tuna, it's not natural.
Right.
So, yeah. We had Will Tuttle come to Hickory a few weeks ago, and it was interesting. How different, we came to it each from the health side. Some people come from the animals, some come from the environment. His talk was aimed a lot at the toxins in animal flesh and in dairy and in eggs. And he talked about fish being one of the worst, because they inject mercury and other toxins. And that really spoke to a friend of mine who came. She's not an animal lover. She doesn't want animals to suffer. But for her, she actually went vegan after hearing him talk. Wow. She said she was going to first give up fish and dairy because those are the most unhealthy for you. And, all the toxins and the buildup and the nasty stuff. But she has since gone vegan, and she's just loving it. It's just interesting what resonates with people.
Right.
What different things, And some people will, when you guys said you were pescatarian, a lot of people do it for health. They think that fish is healthy.
Yeah.
Little do they know.
Fish oil is going to help you, and the protein is great, and not realizing that the animals get their protein from plants, and you don't really need as much protein as they push on you. It's all, even the way that they tell you to eat, the food pyramid, the nutrition guides, everything is based on big pharma. And how do we push people to that lifestyle?
Yeah. And big food. Yeah.
Yeah.
Canada and other countries too, but Canada recently changed their food guide and they made it actually science-based, which is interesting. I don't know how far away we are from that here in the States, but I think we're a little ways away still. There's so much money in it.
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
So doing all this research that you did to go vegan, is that why you started your podcast?
Partly because I'm a real researcher. I love it. And I was just so engrossed in it for months and months. But also years ago, I don't forget when he started the Optimal Living Daily podcast. He's got a number of them. And it started back in maybe 2015. And I discovered it. I'm not sure if that's the right year. Anyway, I discovered it when he had just launched. And so mine is totally modeled after his podcast, but it's about 10-minute daily. He does 7 days a week. And he was reading blog posts on personal development, minimalism and money management and all this stuff. And it's things that I never had time to look up, but I was totally interested in. And I listened to most podcasts at 2 times the speed. So it took me no time to get through, a listen every day. And I loved it so much. And I was, supporting his podcast. And I always thought that would be so good. He's since launched Optimal Finance Daily, Optimal Health, all these ones that he branched off. And I always thought that's so great. And it didn't occur to me until I guess I'd been plant-based about a year, vegan for a bit more, that I thought there's so much out here. There's so many blogs that maybe I could do something like that. And I started looking up blogs, Googling blogs, just to try to gather and see how many there were. But what I was finding were recipe blogs mostly. Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe that's not going to work. You can't, it's not going to translate to audio. Yeah. But I had been subscribing to a lot of the plant-based and animal and environmental website newsletters. And so I realized, I'm getting all this stuff in my email all the time. This is the kind of stuff that would be ideal. So I reached out to that podcast host, Justin Malik, and said, I'm thinking of starting this. It's based on yours. Any advice for reaching out to get people to allow me to read their stuff? And he helped me get, with, how to approach people. He was great. So he was my muse, I guess, the inspiration for it. And then when I started reaching out to people, it was so exciting when they started saying yes. And, Silash Rao from Climate Healers is absolutely use anything you want. It's meant for, wide distribution. Everybody who's doing this wants everybody to know.
Yeah.
So I haven't had anybody say no,
Awesome.
That's amazing. I love it. And it's great that, like I said earlier, when I was introducing you, sometimes I don't have time to read. I love to read. I don't always have time to read and really get the information. But the 10-minute podcast, I can listen to that. And it's amazing because it's easy to absorb, quick to listen to. I can do that while I'm getting ready and it's, no big deal. But I don't always have time to sit there and read everything. And so you're reaching that audience who isn't going to sit there and read it, but wants to have that information. And that's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. And when I went vegan, after plant-based, I started learning it's not just animals, it's not just environment, it's workers' rights, it's antibiotics, it's pandemics, it's so many reasons that I'm still getting surprised by them. I've got a post I'm going to be reading. Is horseback riding cruel? Is it vegan? So many things that I don't think about. I remember one that really shocked and upset me was the use of animal experimentation for agriculture. How they can fatten up the animals better and, get them. It's just it's so nasty. Why do we have to do this stuff? But it's interesting because there is so much to the whole topic of veganism related to so many avenues that there's people writing about it and all over the place. There's so much out there. So really it's fun.
And it's amazing because I don't know, I guess I felt so scared when I first went vegan because I was like, how am I going to know what to do? And my thing is, and it still is, I'm not always going to be perfect. I'm not this ideal vegan. Everything I do may not be vegan, but I do my best. And I know, especially with us having a business that's vegan based, there's always people that's going to call you out and say, well, you don't do this or you don't do that. I remember when we were interviewing Doggone Vegans, and they were talking about their wings. They have these honey barbecue cauliflower wings, and they were asked to use real honey. And they said, yes, we use honey. which isn't, considered it for a lot of people vegan. It's kind of a controversial type thing, but there's a lot of things where, like you said in the beginning, you do your best, and not everybody can do everything to change the world, but everybody, if you play your part, you're going to make a difference. Yep. And I think that's one of the biggest things, though, that turns a lot of people off from being vegan or from talking to vegans, is because there are a lot of people who are very pushy, and if you don't do it exactly the way they think you should be doing it, then they're going to call you out on it. And I think that's a big turnoff, which is something that I don't like to do. I feel like even my parents, everybody, they'll never be vegan, unfortunately. But, I try not to give them a hard time. Like, I'll bring it up and I'll joke around with them and stuff like that. But
I get a kick out of it. Like, our son just celebrated his 5th birthday, and we had a vegan cake, of course. And we're like, do you want to try a slice of cake? Like, no, I'm okay. Like, it's cake. It's
right.
Fine. Just because it doesn't have the
flavor. And our 3-year-old cracked me up because they came over and they had just eaten dinner, and he was like, do you want anything to eat? And they said, no, we just ate out. And they said, did you eat animals? And they were like, yeah, we ate animals. He's like, we don't do that.
Then he said, well,
yeah.
Why do you eat animals? Because what did she say? It's like, because we have to, things like that. And I'm just like, yeah, you don't really have to.
Yeah. But when a 3-year-old can, stand his ground on it, that's very good to watch. Yeah. And kids have a way of getting away with being a little bit pushier.
Exactly. Well, after I went vegan for a while too, it was COVID when I went vegan. But beforehand, I had, even going whole food plant-based was before COVID. And we used to eat out with friends all the time. Like, how am I going to do? There's so many things that you think about that you think are good roadblocks.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of difficult at first eating out with people and trying to eat whole food plant-based, no oil, but, it was fine. But after I went vegan and I learned so much more, it was COVID, so we weren't going out. But I was dreading having to go, like there was a summer thing that our family was going to get together, which didn't end up happening because it wasn't over by then. But I was dreading, like I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? Because I really don't want to be around them eating animals. I don't think I can even see it.
Yeah.
I don't think I can handle it. So I was Googling like new vegan, like this is some phase I'm going to get over soon. Like maybe there's something that new vegans go through and then you move on and then you can live normally like everybody else. And I couldn't find anything. And I was, struggling for months and trying to find something. And then I heard a podcast where somebody talked about the Liberation Pledge. And I'm like, wait, what? And I looked that up and I thought, this is for me. Because it's where it is where you say that you're not going to sit at a table and eat food with somebody who's eating animals. Mm-hmm. So I worked on I thought I have to do that because I really cannot, not everybody's the same, but I just wasn't able to put myself in that position. And so I let all our family know and friends know that I was taking this pledge, and everybody was really supportive. It was still COVID, so it didn't matter.
Right.
Didn't have to eat with anybody. But since then, our family had planned to do vegan Thanksgiving that first year, but again, didn't happen with COVID. Mm. But not everybody is able to do it. But for me, I did it for my mental health. And it's been actually really good for my activism as well, because people will understand. And I get to tell them before an event, say, well, are you serving food? Or I'll come after the food because I've taken this pledge. And they're usually like, wow, good for you. That must be hard. And I just explain why. And they're never threatened or defensive because it's not while they're eating, I feel like I'm giving the stink eye or anything, it's always before and I show up after. So it's been a lifesaver for my mental health, and not everybody can do that, but I'm fortunate enough to, that one has saved me. But one thing that got me, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I said that's awesome. I'm really happy for you that you were able to do that, because that would be really difficult, but it makes a huge stand and shows, it's very visual impact without having to say a lot. Right.
It actually is like you know, going to a baby shower, but coming later, everybody there is talking about for a few minutes why I'm not there.
Yeah.
You know, so without me being a preachy vegan at the time,
Yep.
I get to show up and just, you know, everything's normal. But it also just kind of denormalizes eating animals. You know, I just say, no, I can't do animal abuse. I just can't be around it. And it's just this thing about me.
Yeah.
But they get the message and they respect it. And I've had, I went for a weekend with some girls for a tennis tournament, and I just assumed that I was not going to be going to dinner. And the second night they said, well, we want to go to a vegan restaurant. They all came to a vegan restaurant, and they were so cute. They're like, what are we going to eat? Like, I don't even know how to order. Will you help us order? It was so funny.
Oh, I love
It just bridged that gap for them. They saw it was totally normal. You know,
Yeah.
it was just food. So, and we've got a neighborhood vegan dinner club now because I, you know, couldn't go out with neighbors. So with two other couples who are non-vegan, every quarter we get together and do a vegan dinner at each other's house. So stuff like that has happened just because I've said I can't join you.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. And it's not that I don't just say I can't join you. It's like, would you love to come, you know, for a vegan meal?
Yeah.
We took my in-laws and another couple out to a restaurant and had at a vegan table. We all got the vegan plate, you know, and they were like, wow, this is really good. So,
I love the surprise on everyone's face who's not vegan, doesn't know what to expect, because like we did a vegan Thanksgiving when we were able to, after, you know, everything kind of opened up a little bit, and we had our family over and they were like, this is really vegan? That's vegan? The shrimp is vegan? Like, yes, everything's vegan. They were just like so surprised.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to expose people to things, because they don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. But one other thing that really got me was when a friend said, I was playing tennis and a friend said, are tennis balls vegan? I'm like, I just looked at her. I was so mad. I said, what? Not that too. Oh my God. I had to go look it up. And no, they're not. And tennis was my life. Like I played 4 times a week. And so that's been a big issue for me. And I found a company called Sheep's Tennis, and they worked to develop some vegan tennis balls. The thing is, the felt that covers a tennis ball has wool in it.
Oh, okay.
So there are some of the cheapest balls that one of the companies makes that doesn't have wool, but they're like a really low end ball and they're not really suitable. People are like, this ball is awful. Let me use my balls. You know? But so there's a company out there that tried to develop them and was having trouble, and then did a petition and worked with PETA. So they're taking the advocacy approach to try to get the current tennis ball makers to do plant-based balls. I mean, there's market plant-based everything right now. Like, you know, I was at Target and they have 2 toothbrushes marketed as plant-based. Yeah. You know, everybody's riding that plant-based marketing train. So how about the tennis balls, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, I jumped on board to help him trying to get this going. So I don't feel like I'm just, you know, contributing without trying to do something about it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of those things, like the reaction that you had when you found out, or when they asked that question. We've been through that too. And we're like, just, I don't know, something we were eating or something we were doing. And we're like, I wonder if this has whatever in it. And we look it up and we're like, oh, crap. Why do I have to ask that question? Like, why couldn't I just go on not knowing?
I know, exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes you want to have that dumb, you know, moment still, like you don't know what's going on, but it's hard to change. Change is hard.
Yeah, it is. And especially when there are no alternatives, you know, like the tennis balls, if there's no alternatives, but I don't want to keep buying them. It's my vehicle, you know, my car has leather seats. I can't afford to change that. Yeah. You know, at some point, you know, I will, but you can't just change everything.
Right. Yeah. We just got electric cars, and we were the only ones they had, because, you know, there's a car shortage right now. So the only ones had leather seats. And I was like, crap, like, you know, what should we do? We ended up getting the cars. But I looked it up later and I was like, does Kia use animal leather? And it said, Kia does not use animal leather. They only use vegan leather. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, we're good.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. I didn't know anybody was doing that yet. That's fantastic.
That's one of the things that it's like mind-boggling. You have all these restaurants and companies that are starting to cater to plant-based vegan lifestyle. And then you have some you're like just waiting on, like, why haven't you jumped in? All your other competitors have some kind of option while you have nothing.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's going to be a snowball effect pretty soon, though, because things are really changing.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting because, like, when we first went vegan, I think I only knew a couple people before that were, and when I had found out, that was before I was vegan, and I was like, that sounds like nothing I would ever do, you know? But then, like, after I became vegan and I started meeting new people, and then we talk about things at work, and I'm like, oh, you don't eat animals either? Awesome. Like, you know, so many either vegetarians or vegans that I find that I work with, and I had no idea. Like, I worked with a girl for over a year, and I had no idea that she was also, well, she said she's mostly plant-based, but, you know, I had no idea. Like, and it's so nice to, like, find that niche group, especially because we're getting ready to do a company outing. I'm going to be going out of town and everything. And, you know, before, you know, I feel kind of alone and, you know, not sure what to do, how to eat and everything. But knowing that I'm going with, you know, others who are either vegan or vegetarian, it's like that little comfort feeling, you know, like you're back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then for others to know all of a sudden that there's like you or whatever. Yeah. That's good too.
Exactly.
I usually always wear a vegan shirt or a vegan sweatshirt or something. And several times when I've been in the grocery store, somebody has stopped me and said, are you vegan or are you plant-based? So am I. And it's interesting because, you know, I used to think I was the only one in town.
Yeah.
You know? And they all did too, apparently. So.
Yeah, exactly. Especially growing up, or especially living in Hickory.
Yeah.
Like I grew up in Laurel Springs, so still even further north of there. And like I'm sure there are, but you know, it's not the popular thing to do in those areas, the more rural areas. And so it's hard to find your people. So that's a great idea to wear those shirts out just to kind of connect. I love that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was in a grocery store one time and I actually spoke to a guy because he was behind me and his cart was all, you know, whole food, plant-based stuff. Mm-hmm. So I said to him, are you plant-based? And he said, yeah, I am. I'm visiting my son, blah, blah, blah. But just from what was in his cart.
Yeah.
I was nosy enough to ask him.
Story. I remember when I told my coworkers that I was going vegan, and then they were in there having conversations, but we are made to eat meat and what are you going to get your protein and stuff like that. And I'm sitting here thinking, this is like my first week. I don't know these answers, but the more I educate myself, and now I'm like, please, somebody ask me about this. Please, somebody ask me about this. And they're like, well, you were made to eat, or you were made to eat meat and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, because this, and this. And then they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, you didn't know that, did you? It's just
so true, having information.
Yeah, once you become educated on everything, you feel confident in what you're doing and your beliefs. And like you said, you have a bright smile and everything is just radiant. They can feel the energy and everything's just different.
Yeah.
But I do remember how scary it was at first, though. Like, don't ask me because I don't know. Yeah.
We homeschool now, but like when we first went vegan, YJ was watching all the documentaries with us and he was doing the virtual, you know, online for COVID and everything like that. And so every time he would jump on class, he's like, this is what I learned today. And I learned all about this. And this is why you shouldn't eat animals and stop eating that snack.
That is awesome. Oh my gosh. That is so good. Because kids know it. They know it.
Yeah.
You know. We teach them otherwise, but they know it.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild. What are your favorite documentaries to, like, do you refer people to documentaries, certain documentaries in cases?
Yeah.
Like when you talked about the guy saying, I need to eat, it's natural, it's normal. I think game changers, especially for a guy, but when they, that's where I usually go with.
Love game changers, especially as we were getting started,
That's like one of the first ones, maybe.
Yeah, I think
that or What the Health.
Oh yeah, What the Health. I think that was the first one that we watched, and then Game Changers.
I was so mad after watching What the Health. I was out of town. I called my husband and said, oh my God, we can't support this charity and those charities.
Yeah. And then I think we watched Cowspiracy. We went through all of them. Like, we just Googled anything we could find. We were just like binged them for, I don't know, a week or two, and just like went through everything because it was just all so new. And then there was one about GMOs that we were learning about. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even eat this now. Like, what in the world? And then we've got a tower garden out back. But we lived across from a cornfield, and it was talking about how even if, you have your separate, then the pollen can come over and, contaminate and everything. I was like, so all of my nice fruits and vegetables are going to be contaminated.
Even if you're downhill, like we have all this water runs down through our property. Yeah. Yeah. You can't get away from it.
Incredible. Like all the stuff. Like I was talking to a coworker of mine who just had a baby, and she was like, yeah, I just read an article that baby food has high levels of arsenic, and now I'm scared to feed my kid. And like, it's one of those things where that's how I felt when I started learning about all this. I was like, oh my God, now I don't want to eat.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Certain stuff like that is terrifying. Cause I remember, what was it? The same one. I think it's the same documentary because it started off where it's talking about, it may be Haiti. Haiti, they were going to send Haiti tons of corn, but it was GMO. And Haiti was like, no, we don't want it. We don't want it. They could be starved. And just think of those millions of people starving, and they're rejecting these foods. That should tell us something. But
exactly.
The U.S., there's foods from us that is banned in other countries. And I'm like,
yes.
Crazy.
And just the fact that the same food company, the same food brand will have different ingredients in other countries, but it's okay for you to have them here.
Yeah.
And another thing that I didn't even think about earlier, but YJ was diagnosed with ADHD when he was in school. He had a lot of trouble paying attention. We tried I forget which medication, not Adderall, a different one. We tried all this stuff, and I was like, it was making him depressed. I was like, nope, not doing that anymore. But once we started eating a lot cleaner, the attention, it's not, 100%. He's a kid, but he's able to focus. He's able to listen and pay attention. Like, it's really helped him a lot. It's helped him emotionally as well. And then come to find out, all the dyes, the red dye, the yellow dye, like every single one of these dyes has a different impact, and also how long they stay in your system. It's not just temporary for that meal. Some of like yellow dye lasts for days in your system before that effect is out.
It's unreal what is allowed, eh? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I was doing on some of my research, one of my friends, he would always give me a little bit of a hard time about being vegan. And I would start to tell him stuff that's in his drink or foods he's eating. I was like, that's got a carcinogen in it. So it's like, what's that? I was like, Google it real quick. He's like, this is cancer? I was like, yeah, it's killing me. I was like, how many of those do you have a day? It's like, I eat this every day. I'm like, oh, just keep that information with you. If you're eating it, that's on you.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Like the processed foods, bacon, deli meats, sausage, hot dogs. Kids, we feed our kids that all the time.
Yeah.
And nobody cares. It's like feeding them tobacco. You don't give them cigarettes.
nobody cares. But when you tell them that your kids are vegan, they're like, "Oh, that's terrible. You shouldn't make them eat that way." And I'm like,
an expert.
mean I shouldn't make them eat real food, but it's okay for you to feed your kid chicken nuggets and hot dogs all day? Like, I'm not saying that my kids never have any processed, vegan foods. There's so many amazing, yummy vegan foods.
Oh, yes.
But it's like you're saying it's okay to feed your kids all this, but when I feed my kids fruit and soy and things like that, that's terrible. I should not do that.
Exactly. Yeah, we did the whole food plant-based initially, like I said, and then we have snuck back into probably a higher percentage of processed vegan food than I would actually, like I would probably guess I eat less than I really do.
Yeah.
Because it's so good and there's new stuff coming out all the time.
Yeah. And one of the things, like, we started off very intense. We were doing alkaline vegan. And so we were very, so all the foods would have to be at a pH level of 7 or above. So nothing acidic. You're not eating anything that's not organic. You're focusing, it's also whole food, plant-based, but a higher extreme level of it, which was really great for our body, but it's so hard to maintain and to find time to be able to cook that food, prepare it. It was a lot.
Because it was certain cooking oils, certain vegetables. If the vegetable was a hybrid, you couldn't have it.
Like corn,
cauliflower, broccoli, and stuff like that. We had like a list of things that we could eat, and we may have done that for like maybe 90 days, 3 months, something like that. Mm-hmm. It's very beneficial though, because oh my goodness, the body felt perfect, especially coming off of being pescatarian and then diving into that. We went from, because I remember,
we cut sugar and caffeine and everything. So like when you think about a withdrawal, like we had the severe withdrawal symptoms, like nausea, sweats, headache. It was terrible for like 3 days. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever had this energy in my entire life.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
We had some good health things too. My husband also had high blood pressure, but that went away. For me, our dogs, one of our dogs was having seizures pretty regularly, not regularly enough to go on medication, but we were watching her and when we switched her to vegan food, she hasn't had one since in over a year. Because the animal food is awful. One thing that I didn't realize that I had healed until we watched They're Trying to Kill Us was plantar fasciitis. I had it for years. I figured I would have it forever. And I forget who it was on They're Trying to Kill Us, was talking about a litany of things that she cured. And one of them was plantar fasciitis. I'm like, wait, what? So I, researched and I read an article about it on my podcast, but that had actually gone away too with my going vegan.
Wow.
I had to wear special shoes. I slept in braces that kept my foot up. Like, it was just crazy. It's just all gone. Who knows what kind of things are caused by what we're eating.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about me I love sports, and my oldest does. So we start to see all these athletes that are vegan and stuff like that. And being from North Carolina, you see Chris Paul's vegan, and he tries to get some of his friends and stuff like that. There's tons of athletes, Cam Newton, and it's just amazing to see these athletes and celebrities that are spreading the love of the vegan lifestyle.
Exactly. Kaepernick, he's a big social justice person too. Yeah, amazing. That's what I loved about Game Changers, was seeing the teams and the athletes and the guys learning that not only is it not necessary, but it's better.
Right.
Not eat that stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, man, Marian, we have had an amazing time. I know it's getting late. I don't want to keep holding you too long, but we have loved hearing about your journey. And I want to make sure that all of our listeners continue to listen to you and follow you. So please let everybody know where they can find you.
Find me my website is plantbasedbriefing.com. And you can find that podcast on anywhere you listen to podcasts, any of the major podcast things, also Facebook, YouTube. But from my website, you can subscribe, or I mean, if you're already a podcast listener, just go find it there. So, and one thing before we go, I wanted to give a shout out on your amazing book.
Thank you.
Oh, good. It's so well laid out. It has such a great message and the little summary at the end. I highly recommend this. We have a little library in our neighborhood, you know, with those little small box things. So after I write my Amazon review, I'm going to go put this in the library.
Oh, so thank you so much. Yeah. So for all of our listeners, this is Teddy Rex, the Healthy Dino. I also teach kids fitness classes on OutSchool as well. And so I've kind of got this passion for helping kids to learn, because I feel like, you know, if I would have known earlier, it could have eliminated a lot of the health issues that I went through. And so, you know, I have a passion for teaching them in a way that's not forceful, just helping to spread the word. And so my son loves dinos, Camden. And so we did this book together to help kids to learn about healthy eating and nutrition and just mental wellness overall. And he was a big help in all of the illustrations. He picked out all the dinos and the colors, and we got to do some computer illustrations together. So that was a lot of fun.
It is so, so good. And it's so great to reach kids, you know, it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Hope you keep doing more.
Yeah.
Great talking with you guys.
Wonderful talking to you as well. And I hope you have a wonderful night. And I'll put all of your information in the bio so all of our listeners can go find you.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys.